Before lunch, we talked about positive negative reinforcement and punishment and recovery after punishment and extinction, so that you have more of a grounding in the basic principles underlying behavior. And then we ended up talking about functions. How many functions are there? 4 functions. If you forget everything else, 4 functions, the most important thing to remember. So we looked at some cute videos here demonstrating some of the functions. Here's another.
Come on. No. I'm not playing around, Brooke. You need to brush your teeth.
No.
Yes.
No.
Come on.
No, Mom. No.
You're going to brush your teeth, and I'll help you.
No, Mom.
Yes.
No.
Come on.
No.
I'll help you.
No, Mom.
Stop. You're acting ridiculous.
No.
Come on.
No.
Do you want to go back to Missy and Tim's and not be able to stay here because you're not listening and doing as you're told? Come on.
No.
Please. Brooke, please come here.
No.
It's not okay to hit or spit. Hey, stop it. Brooke, stop it. You need to get over here right now.
No.
You need to brush your teeth.
No.
You need to brush your teeth. Please.
No.
I'm going to walk out of here. When you're done brushing your teeth, you can come out. Okay? No, you're going to brush your teeth.
No. No.
Brush your teeth.
No.
Brush your teeth.
No.
When you're ready, come out.
No.
Brush your teeth. You can brush them.
Difficult daily life for some folks, unfortunately. What were the topographies of problem behavior? Sorry, let's go in our ABC analysis. We don't know if there are any setting events. What was the antecedent? Brush your teeth. What behaviors then followed that? She said no. Yeah, you get really kind of micro-analytic here. She said no, that you need to brush your teeth, which requires these. I need my hands, and so she crosses her arms and backs up, right? She assumes a physical posture that is also refusing to brush teeth. My hands are not available, I'm backing away from you. Before the hit and the spit, Mom did something else. She added a second antecedent. You notice what it was? She said, do you want to go back to Lindsay and Tim's, or do you want to be able to stay here? So what are we going to infer from that? Perhaps there's a separation. Lindsay and Tim are the other parents. But that constitutes a threat, right? So essentially, Mom issued an SD, an instruction, the antecedent. She's refusing to comply or cooperate with that. So Mom, out of desperation, Mom's just trying to get her to brush her teeth. So she's doing what she feels is best, and so she essentially does make a threat, though she's not thinking of it that way. And as soon as she said, you want to go back to Lindsay or Tim's or live here, what happened to her mouth? Like her mouth went down, she adopted a different emotional stance, right? So that clearly had an impact on her. And then shortly after that, she starts aggressing and hitting. And Mom's lived through this because the moment spit wasn't even out of her mouth, right? You better not spit, and spit is coming at her from behind. And then there's the struggle at the door, right? And then you can see how when there's a problem behavior scenario, it can get increasingly severe and risk to safety. Because as soon as we're struggling at the door, now someone could get hurt here. Someone's fingers could get pinched, etc. And then she's locked on the other side and she's screaming and crying. Right? So you've got this escalating chain, threat complicated it. Those are the topographies of her problem behavior. So when Mom says, I need help with brushing your teeth, she's refusing to do it. Okay? Your functional assessment should yield, if you observe or get video or interview, those topographies and that they occur in an escalating chain. And she doesn't go straight to hitting and spitting. She does try to use her words first. And then what's the function? Avoidance, escape. Right? Remember, it's not avoidance because it's not like she saw Mom walking at her with the toothpaste. It's like, no! Right? That would be avoidance. I see the instruction coming, but I say no before you can even deliver it. The gauntlet has been set. Brush your teeth. Now she's straight up escaping. Kind of what I said earlier, I tend to avoid the word avoidance. Right? It's kind of common parlance, I think, but we tend to overuse it. Just straight up escape. The gauntlet is set, and now she wants out of it. So the function is escape. There's attention provided, but that's really not what's maintaining it, right? She just didn't want to brush her teeth. She wasn't looking for attention. She wasn't looking for tangible. She didn't want to brush her teeth. So you see some video illustrations of the 4 functions of problem behavior. And really, a parsimonious, meaning a simplistic analysis of behavior, seeks to categorize any problem behavior, all behavior, into one of those 4 categories. And sometimes they're multifunctional, like the little girl who is escaping the demand to get dressed, but then is also kind of chasing kind of fun, a bit of attention, right? When we teach about functions, we teach them in silos, right? We teach the 4 silos. But in the real world, life isn't nicely packaged into silos. So the functions will often merge or be multifunctional, and the function can shift over time. So functional assessment, I've been mentioning this and kind of front-loading you through the morning, consists of procedures to identify the target behavior, setting events and triggers, and the maintaining consequences. So we've got the 2 things that you guys should be thinking about in terms of if you're doing the roughest approximation of a functional assessment, which would be the most appropriate response to addressing a problem behavior, is at the very least interview and then do an observation to confirm your interview. And your interview should be guided by, I mean, there are commercially available interviews you can buy that will guide the questions quite literally. But if you're going to make up your own interview, you're basically thinking of these 4 functions. You'd be asking questions that are functionally related, like, does she, if you ask her to do certain things, is there problem behavior? And if the answer is no, well, then it sounds like it isn't escape. Right? Does she tend to engage in problem behavior if people come back into the room and then hang out with her afterwards, right? Trying to get to an attention function? So we do an interview, and I'll do more of that in a moment. There's a 3rd level here, and again, I'm giving this just broad strokes. Each of these is a whole class unto itself. Functional analysis is a whole other level. It is considered the gold standard, most rigorous type of functional assessment because we don't just gather information verbally and orally or observe, we actually test. So if I think that the problem behavior is maintained by access to iPad, then I'm going to run a few conditions where if the child misbehaves, engages in the problem behavior, I'll deliver the iPad. And if that's reinforcing, I should see that condition increase. And then I'd have a control condition where they have free access to tangibles, and in which case there should be no reason to engage in problem behavior. So a behavior analyst, a BCBA, is the person who would do a formal functional analysis. Some people refer to them as an experimental functional analysis because you genuinely are running experimental conditions to test your hypotheses. That's the strongest level of control. So, but back to our realities where you might not have that available and you're not expected to go out and run experimental function analyses. What you can leave here today doing is thinking functionally and interviewing if you're in a school and observing. If you're a teacher, you're already observing. If you're a parent, you don't have to interview anybody. You can just be observing and trying to determine what's the function. So an interview, here's some sample questions. And I put the little cheat sheet up here, escape tangible attention, to remind you that these are the motive behind these questions. I'm trying to get to these things. What usually triggers the problem behavior? Right? And it might be really clear cut. It's math. Okay? Right away, I'm probably thinking that there's an escape element here if it's an academic demand. Being alone, I'm suspecting attention, right? When he asks for something and the request is denied, can I have recess? Can I go outside? Can I have iPad? And you say, no, no, no. Well, that would be access to tangible. He wants a thing. What do people usually do after the problem behavior? Does he get it? So you're thinking, and you would ask supplemental questions guided by your functional hypotheses. So if there's a demand to do something and he engages in the problem, does he get a break from it? Do you take it away? Do you do it later on? Do you help him? Because even if you help me, I haven't outright escaped it, but I've escaped the full magnitude of the demand you wanted, and I got you to coach me through it, which is perhaps more tolerable. So help can be an escape outlet as well. So you're looking for those consequences, right? Are they getting something? Are they getting out of something? Are they getting a whole lot of attention? Or some combination? What could you do to guarantee the problem behavior would occur? Right? And this is usually a fairly easy one for school staff to answer, right? If I wanted to guarantee to trigger it, what should I do? Oh, well, you should make sure he doesn't have his visual schedule. If he's tired, make him do language arts. That's guaranteed to set off the fireworks, right? That's going to help guide your functional hypothesis development. What could you do to guarantee the problem behavior will not occur? Leave him sitting at his desk with the iPad for 3 hours. Okay? It sounds like no demands and access to tangible. Attention didn't really enter into that equation, right? But you're starting to narrow down what your hypotheses are. So those are some rough questions to guide you. And again, I encourage you, even if you're not doing formal interviews, just to be thinking about problem behaviors this way, functionally guided assumptions. Here's a mock sample, a really simple example of a functional assessment data sheet, the ubiquitous ABC data sheet. So I put in the date and the time of day. What was the trigger? What did the student or child do? And what do we do as a consequence? And that can give you a rough sense of data. Again, this isn't the most rigorous type of data, but in best case scenarios, it might help you determine trends or identify, in particular, what are the antecedents that tend to be associated with triggering the problem behavior. And that can lead to some functional assumptions and then strategies that result from that. So, like I said, that's quick and dirty. Interview, observe, come up with some hypotheses. The functional behavior assessment process, think of it as funnel shaped. In the beginning, you've got loose ideas, you interview to get some idea of what's going on, then you get a bit more specific and you put eyes on and you see, and at the bottom of this funnel, it should spit out your functional hypotheses. So you go through this process, and this process in some cases, if it's a slam dunk simple problem, can be a matter of minutes, right? I could go into a classroom and teach us, we're having this problem. I ask a few questions and I go and I watch and it's clear as day what's going on. I can identify the function. Those are the easy ones. They're not all that easy. And that spit out the function. And I just went through a functional assessment problem solving or hypothesis development process or algorithm. It can be certainly much more involved than that, but it can be that simple. And one of the things that is sometimes good advice to take from workshops is to take some of these ideas and just go start simple. Go try and address a simple problem. Apply this conceptual analysis to a minor problem where you're already pretty sure of what's going on, just to get the practice in and then develop your skills and address more sophisticated, challenging problems over time. So you've got function at the end of this. Your functional behavior assessment is done the moment you have your function. And then what we recommend doing is plugging it into a competing pathway diagram. And there's a master copy of this cheat sheet and a blank copy in the back of your handout. So here's what the competing pathway diagram is and does. If you look here on the horizontal, you have setting event, antecedent, problem behavior, and maintaining consequence. Assume these boxes are empty, like this. At the end of your functional behavior assessment process, you have an idea of what to put in those boxes. Are there any setting events? Are there physiological setting events like fatigue or pain, constipation pain, things like that? If there are, put those in there. If there aren't, put not applicable, because there don't have to be setting events. There will always be an antecedent trigger, right? That which immediately precedes and triggers the problem behavior. So you put that in there as specific as you can, context dependent, not like demand at school. Which demand in which context, right? Is it a multiplication demand in math, right? That particular demand. Other math demands are okay. Is it writing a sentence versus reading a book? Don't put literacy demand, right? That's not specific enough. What's the specific trigger? And then you plug in the problem behavior. And so if it was brushing teeth in the, say, the staff bathroom after lunch and it was with that young girl we saw, you'd be listing verbal refusal, saying no, crossing arms and standing away, potential to hit and spit, right? Those would be the topographies in escalating form that follow here. And then the maintaining consequence. What I generally recommend here is you put two things in, and I'll show you some samples of this in a moment. You put in a general description, an observational description of what happens, right? If a student refuses to brush her teeth, we might persist for a little bit and then give up and go into the classroom, right? You could write that in there. And then in brackets, escape. Put your function word, one of your 4 function words, in brackets to make it really clear. So you've plotted out the baseline in the competing pathway diagram. And then what you do, I think it might be easier to look at this one. Once I've got my baseline here, then I envision what would this look like ideally if there was no problem behavior. So let's say that it is academic demand in grade 2. It's a demand to write in your journal. So whatever the setting events are, the antecedent is write in journal, and the child screams and throws a pencil and might rip the page. And then as a result, they're removed from writing journal, and that's escape. So regardless of setting events, what should ideally happen when the demand is placed? Please write in your journal about your weekend. The desired behavior goes up here. Will comply or cooperate with the teacher's instruction and write in their journal. And then what would be the maintaining consequence? Given a sticker, praise, extra privilege, right? That's what we're aiming for. So on the horizontal here, you've got the baseline. And up here, you've got this alternate pathway of what should ideally happen. And what often, when you look at this, you might think, every now and then, he actually does just write about his journal. Right? So the desired behavior may sometimes be occurring, and then what's probably missing from the equation is that there isn't an adequate reinforcer that's been happening to maintain it when it does occur, because it's not occurring enough. Or more often than not, what happens is you look at the desired behavior and you're like, he's never done that. He's never done the desired behavior. So how reasonable then is it to expect that we're going to go from our current baseline that we've plotted here to the holy grail most desired behavior just one step? The answer is it's not reasonable at all. You're probably going to need some baby steps to work your way up to it. It's going to have to be an evolutionary process. So then you look down here at what we call the alternative replacement behavior, the ARB acronym. And the alternative replacement behavior is simply going to be the most acute short-term strategy, something we can teach the student to do instead of the problem behavior, that's going to yield the same outcome as the problem behavior. So a nice simple example of this, if the demand is write in your journal, and that leads to or triggers screaming and ripping, and that means I don't have to write in journal, you could give the student a communicative response, say a picture card on their desk that just says, no thank you, and I say write in journal, and they can take the card and give it to me and it says no thank you, and I say okay, then you don't have to write in your journal. What's the upside of that? They've engaged in a pro-social communicative response to request appropriately not to do their journal. Right? So this is a replacement behavior. The ARB is a replacement behavior that's functionally equivalent to the problem. It serves the same function. It results in the same outcome. So the downside of this is, well, he's still not writing in his journal. You're right, he's not writing in his journal. That's the desired behavior. That's the holy grail that we're aiming for. However, can we agree that it's better for him, better for the SEA, better for the entire class if he can appropriately refuse to do work with a pro-social communicative response than screaming and throwing and ripping, which the whole class sees and is stigmatizing, right? And makes him look scary to the other kids and doesn't really have a positive future if he proceeds on that path. So this is not an outright solution, meaning he's going to do the Holy Grail, but it's a step towards it where at least you don't have problem behavior and at least you have appropriate communicative behavior and it functions the same way. Does that make sense? That can be a bit of a hard sell to some people who want to go straight to the Holy Grail and go, no, but he should just do that. To which our counter-argument is usually something along the lines of, yeah, I agree with you. He should just do that. I would love if he just wrote in his journal when you asked him to write in his journal. But the reason we're having this conversation is because you've been struggling for so long, it's been such a problem, that we need to have some plan. Because the reality is he's not going to write in his journal. He hasn't been writing in his journal. So can we compromise that we'll start here? And once that's in place, well, then you can think about what's the next evolution? What's the next evolution? Perhaps it is we establish over a few weeks that he never has to write in his journal at all because he can just do the no card. And then you up it and you have to put a period at the end of an existing sentence and then you don't have to write it. So I'll actually write it for you and all you have to do is go dot, put the period on, and then the demand is removed, right? How's that as a compromise? The lowest response effort that we can think that has the potential to be successful, right? Or maybe he's got to write the first sentence and then doesn't have to write anything else. You determine what the next logical step is, but you need to get your foot in the door. And so the alternative replacement behavior is the first step. You get your foot in the door and then you work from there, right? That's why there is, as I said at the beginning of yesterday, there's no magic here. It's all hard work. It's the application of science and then it's slogging it through and it's the grunt work to make it happen. So let me show you what some competing pathway diagrams look like. And by the way, this is a really simple way. I met with one of my students a few weeks ago. She's an SEA in a school. She's working with her student from school part-time in the summer. And she's had a really difficult time with him at home in the summertime, lots of aggressive behavior. So she asked, could I come meet with you? We need to problem solve this. So she came into my office and she started talking about it. I said, wait, let's go down to this other room where I've got a big whiteboard. And I drew a CPD. And as she was talking, I put all the information in. And by the time she got done talking, she looked at it and she goes, I think I see what I need to do. Right? It kind of diagrammed the solution for her. So I use this clinically all the time. I can't recommend it enough. I remember doing this with a dad once, a mom and a dad, and the dad wasn't, super bullish about the ABA program. He wasn't that involved with it, but he was concerned about the problem behavior his child was engaging in. And as we were sitting at the kitchen table diagramming this out, he's looking at it, and at the end he's like, it's like a map. Like, exactly, right? It's exactly like a map. It's a map of what's happening and why and what a potential first step solution is. So it just takes a problem that seems really stressful and insurmountable and makes it accessible and amenable to change.